Now we've taken a look at how rotation can drive rotation, and position can drive the position of a point of interest, but let's take a look at the way one property can modify the parameters of another property. We'll close these layers up and head over to comp number 2 called Properties. There are several layers in this composition, and we'll turn the last one, layer number 9, on so that we can see what it looks like. However, we don't need to see all of these layers, just the layers at the top, layers 1 through 4. If we use F4 on the keyboard to reveal our switches and modes, we can see that most of these layers are already shied out. We'll close the light flare and turn off the audio for now. Later, when we revisit this layer, we'll turn that back on. Next, I'll go on and turn on shying for the entire composition. This will give us a little more room to see all of the expressions that we add. It's important to note that this composition has been set up in a specific way. The level red and level green layers are both set to 100%. By opening up Scale or typing S on the keyboard with the layer selected, you'll see that the scale is 100%, although the layer itself does not appear to be the full composition size. It's not. If you right-click on the layer or use Control-click on a Mac, you can open up the contextual menu, which will allow you to see the layer in the source project. We'll reveal that, and here in the solids, you can see that this layer is only 100 pixels wide by 56 pixels tall. The green, on the other hand, this deep turquoise solid, is 56 pixels wide and 100 pixels tall. These have been set up this way specifically to work with the expression defined by our knob. If we open up the layer for knob and reveal the rotations by typing R on the keyboard, we'll see that the rotation for this layer is set to 180. We'll change that value back to 0. Next, we'll set an expression for the scale parameter on our level red layer and tie it to the rotation for the knob. Using Alt or Option on the Mac, click on the stopwatch for the scale parameter on level red. Next, we'll use a pick whip to click and drag up to the rotation for the knob. When you release it, go ahead and hit Enter on the number pad, and we'll open up the dialog box for the expression by hovering in the area where the expression lives until we get the small up and down arrow icon. When we see this icon, it means that we can click and drag the window for the expression, revealing more of the text that the expression is filled in. So I'll simply click and drag this open. Now I can see all of the text that After Effects has filled in. Rather than a simple link to another parameter in another layer, After Effects has set up a variable on the first line and an array on the second line. On the first line, there is a variable called temp. Now the variable can be anything. It's just a phrase that describes this very long command. Use the rotation from transformation from this layer called knob in this composition. Rather than writing all of this out twice, we're just going to call this value temp. Then After Effects will create this array on the second line, saying use the value, this whole string, for both the x value and the y value of the scale's parameters. Here inside Scale, we can see that we have an x and a y value. Because rotation is only set by degrees, well, revolutions in degrees, rotation is really a function of the number of degrees we set our layer to. With this set, when we change the rotations for our knob, by clicking and dragging the degree value for the knob, we can see the scale values for the red solid changing to match the value described by the rotation. As we go higher, the red value goes higher as well. If we change this back to 0, but change our revolutions to 1, notice that the red layer interprets the number of degrees the number 1 represents in revolutions. On the knob's rotation, 1 represents 360 degrees. So the expression for the scale on the level red layer indicates 360 degrees for both the x and the y parameter. Currently, both the x and the y value for scale are using the same variable, called temp. However, we may want to lock either the x or the y value to a specific number. We can do this simply by modifying the expression. We'll click on the expression, then modify the second variable in our array. Currently, we have x and y for scale. X is defined by the variable temp, and y is also defined by the temp variable. If we change this to a numeric value, say 100, and use enter on the number pad, the value for the scale is now defined by one variable in our array and a number, meaning 100%. Because the expression is driving the scale for this layer, no matter what percentage I put into my scale value, the size of this image will still be controlled by the rotation of the knob. The width of this layer will now be controlled by the rotation of the knob. I'll change this back to 0 with 0 degrees rotation. Now if I rotate the knob slightly, we can see that even with a 25-degree change on the knob, only 25% of the layer size is achieved on the level red layer.